You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. You know that I need to start with Nets Pacers. The first game of the season for Kyrie Irving. Obviously, there was a lot of speculation on how he'd look after missing the first 35 games of the season. Would he be the Kyrie of old? Would he be rusty? How is this going to work? Well, I think it's safe to say that Kyrie will work out just fine. The guy dropped 22 points yesterday. He had 3 steals. The handles are still there. He hit all 4 of his free throws. He had a nice little action with Kevin Durant in the first quarter that I really liked. Irving didn't miss a beat. He shot 0 for 2 from beyond the arc, which I didn't like, but in all fairness to him, the Pacers played excellent perimeter defense last night. The Nets as a team shot just 5 for 21 from beyond the arc. It was Kevin Durant, Patty Mills, and James Johnson. Those are the only 3 Nets that hit a three-pointer last night. And make no mistake about it, through the first almost 3 quarters of this game, the Nets were playing like garbage. I mean, at one point, they were down by 19 points in the third quarter. They couldn't stop the Pacers to save their lives. And this isn't a good Pacers team. They entered last night 10 games under 500. You look at all the players that they're missing. Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Duarte, Jeremy Lamb, Karis LeVert, TJ McConnell, TJ Warren. I mean, not for nothing, but Dwayne Washington Jr. should not be starting an NBA game. So for the Nets to fall down 19 to this team, you had to be really concerned. I mean, I could hear all the snide remarks. This is all because of Kyrie. He's going to be a distraction. The Nets aren't that good. They're overrated, blah, blah, blah. Then something interesting happened. Led by, of all people, Deandre Bembry, who first got into the game in the third quarter and actually played every minute of the fourth quarter, the Nets rallied. They were only down by 7 entering the fourth quarter. That's not an insurmountable deficit. The Nets kept clawing at the lead. Then eventually, Patty Mills hit a 3-pointer. Finally got off the schneid a little bit. It gave the Nets a 107-106 lead. And the Nets never relinquished the lead. They won 129-121. There are different kinds of impressive wins. Is it impressive to win by 20? The answer is yes. But is it impressive to come back from a 17-point deficit with 2.5 minutes left in the third quarter? The answer is yes. I don't care if it's a team as talented as the Nets going up against a team as short-handed as the Pacers. It is incredibly impressive for this team to have rallied and to have won this game. I mean, it would have been very easy for this team to just keel over and die and say, you know what? We're going to continue our losing streak. We're not going to right the ship here. We're going to lose our 4th straight. Now we have to go home to face a great Bucks team without our 3rd best player. So now we're going to lose 5 straight. Very easy for that doubt to creep into your mind. So for this team to have rallied, for guys like Deandre Bembry and Kyrie Irving to really spark this comeback is incredibly impressive. I don't want to say that this was a big win for the Nets, but they did outscore the Pacers by 21 points in the second half. Like, no one would have begrudged you for turning that game off at some point in the third quarter. I just hope once you saw that the Nets were actually coming back, you turned the game back on. Just to get specific with the numbers, Kyrie, in 7.5 fourth quarter minutes, led all players in scoring in the fourth quarter. He had 10 points. Deandre Bembry overall was a plus 24. Kevin Durant did Kevin Durant things. He had 39 points. James Harden had 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Not a bad game from him. Like, this is what happened when the big three played together last year. Harden took a back seat. James Harden is better than Kyrie Irving. There's no question about that. He has the more well-rounded game, but he's more willing to sacrifice his shots. I'm not saying that Kyrie's a selfish player. He's not. But Harden has really taken a back seat at times in his Nets career. And sometimes that's a bad thing because there are lineups that are out there sometimes where James Harden's by far and away the best player and you want him taking over. but he's looking to pass. It's a mindset thing with Harden. He needs to get out of his own way. That's the thing with James Harden. Sometimes he just overthinks things a little bit. I'm not saying that as a negative. I love James Harden. I want him back. I'd sign him to a max deal tonight. But sometimes he just overthinks things a little bit. Especially on catch and shoot opportunities. My guy, if you have an open shot on the catch, just shoot it. That is something that the Nets need to work on with him. I understand that he hasn't done that a lot in his career, but you're playing on a team with other really good ball handlers. Durant, Kyrie, Mills, even guys like Blake Griffin and James Johnson are very good passers as far as big men go. Harden is going to get catch and shoot opportunities. He needs to be willing to take advantage of those opportunities. A lot of people were curious as to what Steve Nash's rotation would be with Kyrie back in the fold. You knew Patty Mills would go to the bench, but you didn't know who would start along with Harden, Irving, and Durant. Well, those guys started at the 1 through 3 respectively. David Duke started at the 4. And Nick Claxton got the start at the 5. I don't think anyone has a problem with Nick Claxton getting the start. Alright, he's the only rotation caliber true center that the Nets have. I like Claxton. I think he's going to get a ton of money this offseason. I think he's very underrated. I have no problem with him starting. But David Duke? Come on. Who thought that was a good idea? So let me get this straight. You get killed on the glass against the Grizzlies. So you think that starting a guy who's 6'5" at the 4 is gonna help you? I'm sorry, but David Duke is not a rotation caliber player. It's okay if you want to see what he can do. You know, maybe in garbage time he gets in a little bit. You want to give him some second quarter minutes? I can sort of kind of understand that. But to have him start? To have him play 17 minutes? Who on earth thought that was a good idea? To put that into perspective, he played more than LaMarcus Aldridge. There is no planet where David Duke is a better player than LaMarcus Aldridge. Come on. Okay, you tried it, you got it out of your system. Let's never do it again. I mean, look, I'm not opposed to playing rookies. One thing that the Nets have lacked at times is athleticism, energy. A guy who plays like his hair's on fire. I mean, Griffin does that a little bit, but he's so limited that you really can't have him out there for extended periods of time. So if you want to play a guy like Cam Thomas, I have no problem with that. Yes, I am all for that. If you wanted to play Kessler Edwards, I'd have no problem with that. I mean, I just don't understand how you look at the rookies that the Nets are carrying. Thomas, Edwards, Duke, and Day'Ron Sharpe. And say that David Duke is the most deserving of those four to get a start. You know, it's kind of funny. 20 years from now, someone will ask the question, in Kyrie Irving's 21-22 season debut, who was in the starting lineup with him? There was some speculation that he wouldn't start. I never bought into that. He's Kyrie Irving. He's going to start. So look, 20 years from now, when someone gets asked that question, they'll get Durant, they'll get Harden, maybe they'll get Nick Claxton. No one's going to get David Duke. Come on. You didn't want to start Aldridge? You didn't want to start Bembry? I feel like I would have preferred Bembry. Let me tell you, he's not a bad player. Good defender, can shoot a little bit. I have no problem with Deandre Bembry starting. Here's the thing with the Nets and the offense that they run. It doesn't work if there are two or less shooters on the floor. They don't get the spacing that they need. The opposing team can just collapse in the interior. The Nets are forced to take contested shots. It doesn't work. So in essence, what you need to do is divide the Nets roster in two, shooters and non-shooters. Make sure that there are always 3 or more shooters on the floor at all times. And when I say shooting, mid-range shooting counts too. Alright, so LaMarcus Aldridge is a shooter. Durant's a shooter, Harden's a shooter, Mills is a shooter, Kyrie's a shooter. You can make the argument that Deandre Bembry's a shooter. He's shooting 46.2% from beyond the arc this year. He's hit just under 60% of his field goal tries. I understand that he's not shooting with regularity, but I'm not opposed to trying it and seeing what happens. And guys like James Johnson, Blake Griffin, and Paul Millsap are not shooters. Alright, you look at the efficiency, it's just not there. There's a role for the non-shooters. There's a role for guys like Johnson and Griffin and Bruce Brown and Claxton. Guys like that. Screen and roll, post up, play interior defense. In the case of Griffin, hit the deck on every loose ball. But going forward, I feel like those would be the 10 guys who I'd play every game. I understand I can't do that with Kyrie. So you want to put in one of the rookies, a guy like Thomas or Edwards. Maybe Duke. I'm okay with that. You want to try to find some run for Paul Millsap, see if he can get going. I'm okay with that. The Nets have some work to do on the buyout market. I don't know who's going to become available, but there are always some good players that get bought out. You know that some of them are going to want to go to Brooklyn, try to get a ring. It's how the Nets got Griffin. It's how they got Aldridge. It happens. I'd love for the Nets to add a backup point guard. I understand that they have a lot of ball handlers, but for home games, and that feels so stupid to say, but for home games, with Mills entering the starting lineup, I'd like there to be a true backup point guard rather than just moving Mills to the 1 when Harden needs to take a rest, or even Durant, moving him to the ball handler role. Add a true backup point guard. Doesn't need to be great. He just needs to be better than Javon Carter. But most importantly, the Nets need to add a backup 3. And that guy needs to be able to shoot the lights out. As it stands right now, that guy is probably Deandre Bembry. The thing is, though, in a perfect world, he's starting. My ideal starting lineup is Harden, Irving or Mills, Bembry, Durant, Claxton. I want Aldridge off the bench. I want him as my 6th man, my spark plug. Can he start? The answer is yes, but I think I'd rather have him as that spark plug off the bench. It's going to be very interesting to see how Steve Nash handles his rotation going forward. It's going to be interesting to see how Sean Marks approaches the trade deadline and the buyout market. I'll say this. There are some guys that we've heard mentioned as trade possibilities that would make sense for the Nets. Guys like Justin Holiday, Kenrich Williams, and Goran Dragic would make perfect sense. Even a guy like John Wall, I could see the Nets going after. It's going to be very interesting to see how this unfolds. Moving on now to Warriors Mavericks. The big story there is that Dirk Nowitzki got his number 41 retired by the Mavs yesterday. There will be a statue of him outside the American Airlines Center. And with that motivation powering them, the Mavericks destroyed the Warriors 99-82. Luka Doncic is showing no ill effects from his COVID absence. He had 26, 7, and 8. It was just a really special night. Obviously, Dirk is well deserving of the honor. Best player in Mavericks history by far, not even close. Future Hall of Famer. And you think back to that Mavericks team that won the NBA title, beat the Heat in 6 games. We talk about big threes and superstars teaming up. Dirk didn't have that. Who was the second best player on that Mavericks team? Jason Terry? All due respect to Jason Terry, Not a superstar, especially not at that point in his career. Sean Marion? Not a superstar at that point of his career. Tyson Chandler was really good. I wouldn't call him a superstar. J.J. Barea was really good. I wouldn't call him a superstar. Jason Kidd was really good. Wouldn't call him a superstar at that point in his career. Dirk Nowitzki really beat the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh Heat by himself. I mean, he didn't have a Robin to his Batman. I don't even know if he had an Alfred. Maybe he had a Commissioner Gordon. Maybe. And let me tell you, there are parallels to Dirk and Luka. Firstly, both of them are European. Nowitzki's German. Doncic is Slovenian. They're being asked to carry the Mavericks by themselves. I mean, all due respect to Kristaps Porzingis, but part of being great is staying healthy. And Porzingis has never done that. I mean, you can't count on him in the playoffs. You can't count on him staying healthy. So who's the Robin to Doncic's Batman? Jalen Brunson? Good player. Very good player. Not great. Tim Hardaway? Very good player. Not great. Dorian Finney-Smith? Good, not great. I mean, when you have a talent like Luka, he can win games by himself. There's no question about that. He's done that his whole career. I mean, can he win a title by himself? If Dirk can, Luka can. To me, it's just very interesting that the Mavericks are almost identical to the best team that Dirk ever played for. You're led by a transcendent talent. A guy who, if he continues on this trajectory, will get into the Hall of Fame. Not saying he's there yet, just saying, if he keeps it up, he's a Hall of Famer. No supporting cast, though. And if not for Herculean efforts, day in and day out, by this superstar, the Mavericks are nothing. The dichotomy, to me, is amazing. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. And I'll start with some controversy around NFL MVP voting. One of the voters for NFL MVP is a man by the name of Hub Arkush. He's a Chicago writer. He said the other day that he wouldn't vote for Aaron Rodgers for MVP because of his off-the-field behavior. And you don't need me to rehash what Rodgers did off the field, okay? We all know the story. I covered it on this show. And I killed Aaron Rodgers for it. A lot of people, namely Rodgers, got upset at Arkush. Rodgers even called Arkush a bum. He then said that if Arkush wants to make the award Most Valuable Vaccinated Player instead of Most Valuable Player, he should do that. Arkush apologized for what he said last night, but I gotta say this, I don't think he should have apologized. I agree with him. I'll be completely honest with you. I have no earthly idea why Hub Arkush is being dragged through the mud like this. It wasn't that long ago that we were all criticizing Rodgers for misleading the public about his vaccination status. Now, when someone takes that outrage to its logical next step and says, I'm not going to vote for Aaron Rodgers because of what he did, that's wrong? I'll be completely honest with you. Even if I'm taking the COVID stuff out of the equation, I don't think Rodgers is the MVP. I don't even think he's the most likely quarterback to get MVP. Like, there's a legitimate debate in the NFL right now on who should get MVP. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Jonathan Taylor, and Cooper Kupp. So tell me why it's wrong to say that Rodgers isn't going to get your MVP vote because he played in one less game than those guys. Part of being great is being out there every single week and giving your team the best chance possible to win. You think Jordan Love starting against the Kansas City Chiefs gave your team the best chance possible to win? Yeah, only dropping 7 points. That's a great way to win a football game. So let me get this straight. Are we going to vilify everyone who doesn't vote for Rodgers for MVP? Not for nothing, but Rodgers isn't leading the NFL in touchdowns. He's not leading the NFL in passing yards. He's not leading the NFL in completion percentage. You want to tell me that the Packers are the best team in the NFL? And the quarterback of the best team in the NFL should always win MVP? I have never heard that before in my life. Last year, when Rodgers won MVP, the Packers weren't the best team in the NFL. The Chiefs were better. And I'm saying best in terms of overall records, not an objective ranking of best. When Mahomes won his MVP, the Saints and Rams were better than the Chiefs. Did anyone that year say that Jared Goff was a legitimate MVP candidate? This is just incredibly dumb. There's no issue here. None whatsoever. You want to tell me Arkush shouldn't have vocalized why he's not going to vote for Rodgers for MVP? Look, in Arkush's apology, he said that they're not supposed to discuss their votes publicly until after the awards have been announced. So let me get this straight. If Arkush had said that he didn't vote for Rodgers because he misled people, but he said it after the fact, would he be vilified? What if the vote was a landslide? Those votes are made public. 50 people comprise the panel that votes for NFL MVP. Rodgers got 44 votes last year. Josh Allen got 4. Mahomes got 2. Okay, run away for Rodgers. But let's say this year the vote is 30 for Brady, 10 for Taylor, 5 for Kupp, and 5 for Rodgers. Those people who vilified Arkush, whether he publicized his reasoning before or after the vote, would look incredibly foolish. Look, if the vote is 26-24, I can understand why people would get upset. You're vilifying Rodgers for making a choice that pertains to him personally, even though I disagree with that logic. I don't think not getting the vaccine is a personal choice issue because it endangers everyone around you. But I digress. I can understand why people would get upset over that, okay? There is a subset of the population that would scream bloody murder over that. It fits their MO. It just does. See, the thing that Arkush did wrong is he brought up a non-football reason to not vote for Rodgers, which I think is valid, okay? I don't begrudge Arkush for what he said, but the thing is, there's a perfectly valid football argument to not vote for Rodgers. It's very easy to say, if you want to say something about your vote, even if you're not supposed to, if you feel like you need to, for whatever reason, you can say Tom Brady has the most passing yards in the NFL this year. He has the most passing touchdowns this year. What he's doing at the age of 44 is nothing short of incredible. I think he deserves the MVP. No one would fault you for that. Even if you said something similar about Jonathan Taylor or Cooper Kupp, no one would begrudge you for that. But because you brought up the COVID stuff, you got people riled up. That's the thing. You didn't need to go that route. You've got to know when discretion's the better part of valor. Even if you're not voting for Rodgers solely because of what he did in terms of COVID, doesn't mean that you need to scream that from the rooftops. There are perfectly valid football reasons to not vote for Rodgers, and no one would begrudge you for that. In fact, people in Chicago would probably love you for it. That's the thing. Arkush really didn't use his noodle. I think the fact that people are getting this riled up over what he said is ridiculous. I don't think he should have had to apologize, but he did bring this on himself. If he had stuck to just play on the field reasons, there's no issue. Moving on now to the Washington football team signing Charles Leno to a 3-year deal worth $37.5 million. That's $12.5 million per year. And this is a great move for Washington. The Bears, for some stupid reason, cut Leno after the NFL draft. I understand that they have Jason Peters starting at left tackle, and Peters has had a really good season. The thing is, though, Leno's younger. He was a lifetime Bear. They'd be in a better spot with him starting at left tackle than Peters. They'd have more future flexibility. So Leno goes to Washington on a 1-year prove-it deal. It was worth $4 million, and he has been outstanding. He has played every snap for Washington. According to Pro Football Focus, this year he has a 79.9 overall grade. He is, without question, one of the best left tackles in the NFL. And to pay him $12.5 million per year is an absolute steal. That doesn't put him at the top end of left tackles. In terms of AAV, he's now 16th among all left tackles. Total value, he's 14th. That's more than fair. In fact, that's a bargain. This is an excellent job by Washington. Great job by them in seizing upon the Bears' mistake. The Bears could end up looking for a new left tackle in the offseason. Jason Peters may retire. He's 39. He's going to be 40 in about 2.5 weeks. Meanwhile, Washington has their left tackle of the future all locked up. Great job by the football team. There were a couple deaths in the NFL world that I really want to talk about. The first one is that of Greg Robinson, who died yesterday at the age of 70 from Alzheimer's disease. Without Greg Robinson, the Broncos don't win the Super Bowls that they won in the late 90s. Everyone remembers how great the offense was, with guys like Elway and Terrell Davis and Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey and Shannon Sharp. Well, you still gotta stop teams from scoring if you want to win. You want to expect your team to win 38-35 games all the time? Look, I understand with an offense like that, you can do that, but that does put an incredible burden on your offense. Robinson toiled around in college for a while. He was with UCLA for a really long time. He was defensive line coach there from 82 to 88. Then in 89, he was their offensive coordinator. Then when Bruce Coslett took over as Jets head coach, he hired Robinson to be his defensive line coach. It probably didn't hurt that they both went to Pacific. They did go there at different times, for whatever it's worth. Under Robinson, Dennis Byrd had a 13-sack season. I mean, you know the story of Dennis Byrd. Would have been a great player, gets paralyzed during an NFL game, ends his career. But before that, he was a great player. And Robinson really helped him reach that potential. He also helped a guy like Jeff Lageman have a 10-sack season. Thought of as a bust? Not really. He had a solid career. Marvin Washington had a good season in 92. Lageman came back from injury in 92 to have a good 93 season. 8.5 sacks. The D-line of the Coslet teams was a bright spot. And that's saying something because those teams were not that good. Coslet only made the playoffs once with the Jets in his 4 years there. In 91, the Jets lost to the Oilers 17-10 in the wild card round. When Coslet was fired after the 93 season, the Jets promoted their defensive coordinator to head coach. That man's name is Pete Carroll. Carroll promoted Robinson to defensive coordinator. Now, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. The Jets were not bad under Carroll to start off. They went 6-5. Then the Marino fake spike happened. They dropped their next 5 straight. They went 6-10 to finish out the year. Carroll was fired and was replaced by Rich Kotite because only the Jets could look at Pete Carroll and Rich Kotite and say that Rich Kotite is the better option. Robinson landed on his feet when Mike Shanahan took over as Broncos head coach. Robinson was his defensive coordinator. Now, you know how great the Broncos were in 97 and 98. They won back-to-back Super Bowls. What you may not know is that in the playoffs, the 97 Broncos, in the wild card round, the divisional round, the AFC title game, and the Super Bowl, gave up 17, 10, 21, and 24 points, respectively. So you're giving your offense a chance to win every single one of those games. Especially when you're as talented as that offense was. They were even better in 98. In the divisional round, the Broncos destroyed the Dolphins 38-3. They made mincemeat of Vinny Testaverde and Curtis Martin in the AFC title game. They beat the Jets 23-10. Then in Super Bowl 33, the Broncos beat the Falcons 34-19. After that, the Broncos regressed. In 2000, their defense was not good. They made the playoffs because their offense under Brian Griese, Mike Anderson, Smith, and McCaffrey was fantastic. But in the wild card round, they lost to the Ravens 21-3. Shanahan fired Robinson as defensive coordinator. And that was the end of Robinson's run of dominance, if I can use that term. He was with the Chiefs for a few years, did not do a good job, ended up at Syracuse, spent 4 years there, and was absolutely atrocious. I mean, it's not good when you have Floyd Little and Jim Brown publicly criticizing you. If you're Syracuse's head coach, you don't want to tick those guys off. But make no mistake about it. In the mid to late 90s, you'd be hard-pressed to think of a better defensive mind than Greg Robinson. The second death is that of Ralph Neely, whose death was announced today at the age of 78. You think of the best offensive linemen of the mid-60s to the mid-70s. You probably think of guys like Gene Upshaw, Mick Tingelhoff, Larry Little, Ron Yary, Jim Otto, and Winston Hill. But make no mistake about it, Ralph Neely was just as good as any of those guys. For his whole career, he was one of the best offensive linemen in football. There's no question about that. He had a really good career at Oklahoma. And that led to interest from the NFL and the AFL. The NFL's Baltimore Colts took him with the 28th overall pick of the 65 draft. The AFL's Houston Oilers took him with the 15th overall pick of the 65 draft. Neely was a second-round selection in both leagues. Now, interestingly enough, the AFL draft took place before bowl games. So Neely had agreed to a contract with the Oilers, but he wanted it kept secret so he could play in the 65 Gator Bowl. It didn't work out, though, because when Neely's NFL rights were traded by the Colts to the Cowboys, Neely backed out of his deal with the Oilers and signed with the Cowboys. It made its way to court. Eventually, it was decided that Neely was a Cowboy. And that's where he spent his entire professional football career. For 13 seasons, he was a stalwart on the Cowboys O-line. From 1966 to 1969, he made first team All-Pro each year. In 67 and 69, he was a Pro Bowler. He ended up making the NFL's 1960s All-Decade team. If I go in depth on how great Neely's Cowboys teams were, we're going to be here until New Year's. So I'll just tell you about the 2 Super Bowls that he won. In 71, the Cowboys went 11-3. Their defense shut down the Vikings in the divisional round, 20-12. They repeated that performance against the Niners in the NFC title game, 14-3. Then they creamed the Dolphins 24-3 in Super Bowl VI. Unfortunately for Neely, he only played in the first 7 games that year. He fractured his left leg in a motorcycle accident, so he did not play in the playoffs. Tony Liscio got the start at left tackle after Neely got hurt, for whatever it's worth. But Neely would play in a Super Bowl. In 1977, the Cowboys went 12-2. They utterly destroyed the Bears in the divisional round, 37-7. They beat the Vikings 23-6 in the NFC title game. Then in Super Bowl 12, they crushed the Broncos 27-10. Ralph Neely started every game that year. In 2018, the Professional Football Researchers Association named him to their Hall of Very Good. It begs the question, should he be a Hall of Famer? Yeah, you can make a very strong argument for it. I mean, look. Who was the right tackle for the Cowboys when Neely was there? Rayfield Wright. Rayfield Wright is in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. Neely isn't in Canton and isn't in the Cowboys Ring of Honor. There's something wrong with that. It'll be interesting to see if Neely's death serves as the impetus for reevaluating his legacy. Will he get into Canton? Will he be in the Cowboys Ring of Honor? If I had a vote, I think I'd say yes to both. May Greg Robinson and Ralph Neely both rest in peace. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.